Good afternoon, Doug. I see we don't have, well, we don't hear you yet, but when we don't, Joe and Andrew are both going to be missing today.
That's unfortunate because I have so many questions for Joe.
Yes, I know. And there's a couple of items here that Joe knows more about than I do, but cover as well as I can. If you can join us, great. But if not, we'll have a subdued meeting, which is always good. So have people had a chance to look at minutes? If there were any comments on minutes?
I don't recall any.
Okay with me. Okay, motion to approve. Yes, second. Everybody in favor?
Aye.
You are in favor, Greg? Doug is in favor.
Yes, oh, yeah, sorry.
Thank you. Unanimously approved. Okay, so let's get into what we're seeing in the water. I see you had a lot of contact with USGS in the last days.
Right, yes. We've, the recharge isn't going very well, in a word, I think.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, I did not print that out. We're still over the median on the data on the two wells that I have, the transition.
Measuring tomorrow.
Yes, she's coming for January. She's coming in tomorrow now.
So we'll have more information in February about that. And we have Ken's information, which is
right. I can report on our
basically what we need to know. It's not raining.
2024 was a great year at 49.59 inches. I consider a good year average about 45 inches basically in this neighborhood. The month-to-date, year-to-date, month-to-date number of 126 is when I checked all the numbers. And as of that date, we were 1.19 inches for January. And so basically taking that number, that is our year-to-date number is 1.19 inches. If you take a look at the at previous years, we've had much better Januaries. Like 2024 last year was almost 8 inches. That's a big drop. In 2023, it was a little over 6 inches. And 2022 was 4 inches. You can see it varies a lot. In 2021, it was 3 inches.
Right, but we're in a low
roundabout
years.
But basically, it wasn't until basically 2019 where we had 6 inches again in 2018. So basically, this has been a dismal January. And if it continues, which the forecast that I got looks like 10 more days of no rain, approximately, from yesterday. We will need to be thinking about what we've been talking about with drought conditions, probably, depending upon the month, totally depending on the wells, since we don't have that good data, which is, again, something that we talked about. And that's an incredibly important number for us to have on a regular basis, is the well height. We just can't do anything without that feedback we get from USGS.
Right, although we do get that, we have been getting it monthly for decades, so.
Yeah, it's been spotty lately.
It has been, yeah, so what's the understanding of that?
Dave, we had Dave for a number of years, and Dave Fulcher, I think his name was, he's been reassigned to Nassau County.
I see.
And they have, there's Maria, I think her name was. And she was operating under what are their normal procedures, where they look every 3 months at the data. They measure every 3 months, basically. So now they're aware, working with Mike Como, it's okay. We understand.
It's been measuring more frequent.
Yeah, that's exactly right. We had that monthly basis.
Right.
And we should really touch back again with Mike, once we get this squared away, and get a clear understanding of what it was the plan that we were going to operate with the automated equiment.
Right.
And I'm not even sure who negotiated that agreement with. I presume is Joe on the line? No, Joe
It's
is,
not online, but I do have the letters from USGS saying that they would be doing, if we paid for the normal monthly
Right.
well level readings, that they were going to apply the automated system to every well.
okay, that would be a great letter to have.
That was a while ago,
This
wasn't
is a while ago.
Yeah,
wasn't
so
that?
you-
Yes.
Yeah,
Definitely
couple
want
years
to
ago.
trigger that again.
Yeah.
yeah, I don't recall that letter, so.
So, okay.
I'm practicing for when I go up to join the cabinet, you know, when the cabinet for Trump's,
Uh-huh.
when it-
Practicing not recalling what you said.
yeah, so I don't recall that. That's,
Okay.
One thing, Ken, we had such a monumental rainfall amount in the spring
Mhm.
that I think, you know, we really have to wait and see. You know, it's just that it's trending differently every year as far as the
We truly don't know.
rainfall goes. So
It's
rather
been
than hit the
very-
panic
very
button, you wanna.
unusual. We've had these moments of
Right.
lots of rain.
Yeah.
More than we normally have for
Yeah.
several months, and then now, no precipitation, so it's working itself out. It's a change, there's no question about it, and that one, you're right.
So, yeah, so we are, you know, the general picture, I think we're all aware that the general picture is increased rainfall in the eastern half of the United States over the course of decades, short term, which could be and recently was few years short term. That can reverse and we can have droughts. And certainly, the past doesn't tell us that what's going to persist into the future. So we have to keep our eye on it. The three of you, Doug, Greg, Ken, met as a sort of a subcommittee to think about how we're doing our drought reporting.
here's,
Peter?
what I've done,
Peter, excuse me.
Doug, yes.
We moved off this checking back with the USGS as to what happened regarding the piezometers and the online reporting. I think that's really, really important. And
Yeah, I
this
do too.
situation with the person from USGS going on a 3-month cycle in terms of measurement
Right. We certainly paid.
illustrates the necessity of having all of those things automated so we're not vulnerable to people, you know, going offline for whatever reason, vacations, etc.
Right. I agree with you. I will personally take up the discussion with Joe about, and with Greg, I guess, because
that would be great.
having a conversation, right, about reminding them of what was agreed to.
It seems to me we paid the money,
Mhm.
so
Yep.
they should perform on their side of the bargain.
Yep,
We
absolutely.
also talked about asking them what the cost would be to test for more than, you know, just the
Just well.
well depth. So I don't know if anybody has that amount, like even if we did 1 or 2 full panel testing, just like to know what the cost might be.
Right. Well, keep in mind that we're now approaching, it's now 2025. So in 2016, 17, and 18, in 9 wells, not the same wells as that we just so we do the depth.
There wasn't some.
They were doing full panel testing.
Right,
And the plan has always been that that would be repeated on a decade over
Okay.
decade basis, right? So that means that what we're looking at is a full water quality testing regime starting next year, the following year, and the year after that.
okay.
That's about $35,000.
That was about that.
Yes, that
Right,
was.
right.
Tense, good point. We have
Right.
a letter.
We have
That's
to,
right. Yeah.
right, and so the question is, you know,
2015.
right, Irene Fisher had been the USGS person who had spearheaded that. I don't know if she's in the same position she was a decade ago, but I'm more than willing to put in a call to Irene and see what she thinks about how we should proceed with that. So did you have a sense of, I mean, what you just distributed something, right?
yes,
So do you want to?
what I, we met twice now and came up with a series of thoughts on how to handle it. And what I just handed out was the concept of this is what we would be distributing on a monthly basis. As far as the report to the town board goes, we had installed a mathematic calculation to say, here's the level of drought that we're in.
Previously, we've been
Previously,
thinking that we might get to.
That's, yeah,
And based on our conversation last month,
Right.
right.
the idea is to move away from that conceptually. Andrew was saying that Joe was asking the question, why? What are we getting out of, automatically moving to a higher drought level? So what's your thought about how we should handle it?
Well, what we have here is that we're taking a look and we're gonna take those values that we have been receiving, plus some others, and make it the responsibility of the WAC, which includes people that are boots on the ground in the areas, various areas of the island, and come up with, the term, we talked about a level of concern. What's our level of concern in terms of drought right now? And it would be a matter of the WAC saying, okay, we think this is a severe or moderate, or, well, I'll talk about what those numbers are in a moment, what those definitions are. And it would put us in, we would then be providing to the town board, here's where we think we are right now, rather than, okay, that's where we are on the graphic of the big four wells. This is taking the entire scope of the things that we've taken information on, the data that we look at, and say, okay, town board, here's where we think we are in terms of our level of concern of how whether or not action should be taken to change things that are mandatory or are voluntary. That being said, we also are thinking that we ought to just take we had a series of topics. It was stage one was guarded, stage two, and we had which should be voluntary, which should not be voluntary.
Right. We had tried to create
Take that stuff out. That we'll just, maybe use a term, it's a drought reaction guidelines, I guess. And then the town board can take a look at what their options are, and they can make the decision, or we could recommend, this is a give and take that we'll have to work out with the town board.
Well, yeah.
I look at the different the different descriptors for the state, and I don't know, because I don't think I was in on this, but I don't know why we couldn't just stay with that language, because it's so easy for people to understand.
The state descriptors.
Yeah, normal, watch, warning, emergency, and then tag a definition of that.
Just the four.
Yeah, it keeps it simple.
Yes, and there is the normal, which turns out was in there all along under the drought management coordination annex of the town code, which is March of 2024. Drought stage is then determined by appraising of both indices, and they have, two indices. Drought stage is determined for each drought region. Normal conditions and 4 different drought stages have been established. The first is the normal, which is where you're saying that we don't have, there isn't a drought, either forecast or we're not in a drought.
And we wouldn't have to put an advisory out for that.
That's right.
Correct. And we would tell, if we reach that point, the WQI's role talking to the town board is, hey, we got good news. You don't have to worry about that.
Nothing to talk about.
Yeah. So it's drought watch, drought warning, drought emergency, and then drought disaster. And that is along with the normal condition, which is no drought. It's pretty similar. Those would be the words, it doesn't matter to me at this point what we would use.
And there are descriptors for each one of these, right? You got them.
Yes.
Okay. So, that could be an addendum, but it wouldn't necessarily have to go out to the public as such.
Yeah, how we would handle that, I don't know. Yeah, whatever,
That would be up to the town board. Well, we just, I think, make a recommendation based upon our findings as a group.
Right, but often what is going to happen is that the information will be available. both because we've spoken about it, people become aware of it. It's mostly, there's an educational function to what we do and to what we say.
Absolutely.
And then frequently, the board can throw, will throw up its hands because they don't have the bandwidth to do a further analysis than what we've done.
Yeah.
And so I think that the question that kind of pushes itself on us is the question that started to come up last time, which is why? Why are we doing this? And I think that for me, there are two parts of the discussion that seemed a little bit like a different approach. The first was, Joe was saying, the reason there's a concern about drought a month ago, looking backwards from there, had less to do, there's so few people on the island, had less to do with that people are going to be over consuming and had to do with fire hazard.
Right.
That was new for us, the
Yes.
idea that,
Yeah.
that we have to tune into drought relates to fire hazard. So now, in your comments, I think there was some comment about wanting to coordinate with the fire department.
Yes, I said that.
Yes,
I
and just, I did.
haven't done that yet, but
I spoke to the chief, Chief Rasmussen, and he says, it says, alls we do, what the fire department does is they work out their, and they get the direction either from the county or the state. When the state says, okay, your district is in the fire zone, I have here, suddenly I can't find it.
We have people attending and we have the paper attending. We're very useful in terms of getting the word out that there's a concern about something.
Here, the description of fire danger ratings, and the ratings go red flag, extreme, very high, moderate, and low. That's the rankings that they have. And the red flag is a short-term temporary warning, and the extreme red is actually a situation of where if I'm reading this correctly, and it seems like a surprise to me. The red flag seems to be the sort of a fire situation of where you have extreme conditions of source burnable material, and the red flag is, here comes a 30-mile-an-hour gale storm.
Right. I mean, I'm very sensitized to this because my father-in-law lives like right at the edge of the LA fires. I'm just very sensitized to the fact that, we tend not to tune into it because we tend to be moist, but we're not always moist.
So it doesn't really correlate
No.
exactly with the drought status at all.
I don't believe,
Because we're just-
I guess, the way that it is established, I didn't print out, there's some description with the state DEC process of what they're looking at, how dry is it, what season it is,
Right. It's just a leaf fall.
middle of winter, you say, hey, things are pretty good, so.
And they also said, moisture retention in the soil.
Yeah. The one thing that I have still.
Conversation back.
And didn't find out.
So let's let Doug,
Can we
it starts
just bring
on
the
Doug's.
conversation back to the genesis for the subcommittee?
Yeah,
We're on
go
a
ahead.
tangent here about fires. The reason the committee
Well,
was
there
set
was a
up
second, right, go ahead.
is really because we found ourselves in an apparent drought, the existing criteria by which we were going to call a drought condition didn't serve us well. And so what Greg is describing is an approach that would enable us to do it on a more ad hoc as well as forward-thinking approach, so that when we're in the midst of something and we can look out the window and say, that's a drought, we can call it, or we can bring it to the board's attention. That's really the genesis of what we were working on. The fire thing is important, but it's a sidebar to the drought.
Well, so I had started to say there seemed to be two elements that seemed new in the conversation. One was the fire hazard, and the other was that we have had a desire to treat the entire island as one aquifer, one situation, and it really is not. And we have very different, so in the winter, in the late fall, the trees have dropped their leaves, there's a lot of leaf litter around, things are very dry, so the fire hazard thing might be relevant. But what you were thinking, what you were seemed to be frustrated about, Doug, was last year during the high season, during the warm season, when people were out here, and it seemed like we had pretty high drought intensity going into the late summer, we were not able to, because previous rainfall had been high, our levels didn't really show the idea that we were in a drought.
It had been, it had very much been tied to the big four wells, which, if you think about it, it's
Which
our
are
water,
more central.
that's the water tank. That's our water supply.
Right, well, we think of it, we think of it as pressure, but all those are deep wells. All four of those wells are deep wells, meaning they're not the ones on the near shore areas.
That is correct.
Right, so what we're finding is a bifurcation of concern where you have, our wells are above normal in the center, and yet you have a concern about behavior in the near shore. So I think that has everything to do with, like, why are we having these considerations? And to some degree, we're thinking about the need to modify behavior in the near shore.
Well,
This is not- Yeah, right.
Yeah,
I mean, we went 90 days without rainfall.
right.
90 days. That's a long time in the course of it's a quarter of the year.
Right, and what would you
and-
like to have seen your neighbors doing?
Well, I would like to see people stop watering lawns and washing cars. Maybe even watering flowers. I mean, I really think you have to be very cognizant that in the nearshore areas, the thickness of the aquifer is
Minimal.
much more shallow. And so they're more vulnerable. And one of the things that we discussed in the committee was adding these additional monitoring wells on Menantic Peninsula and in Silver Beach to the big four, so that we have a broader picture of the health of the aquifer. And we are taking these other data points into consideration.
Right.
So can I ask you, Doug, then in your subcommittee, you might not have gotten to this point yet, but are you then looking, as we talk about, these different levels, are you looking to break them down by area?
We haven't
mean, that
gotten there
seems like-
yet, Lisa.
That seems like a lot of work, and
Great question.
Doug, I'm sorry,
haven't gotten
I didn't, I'll send this out to you, but this was in order to kind of trying to bring this home to
Right,
what
yeah.
we would be doing, this would be an example, a draft of the communication to the town board regarding drought status.
Yes.
I just handed that out to you guys. You guys have it too. And basically, it's drought status based on a WAC review of the appended information. The drought level should be whatever, the numbers that we have from the county. That's our level of concern. And then have key considerations and rationale. And then you roll into the attachments that are here, including the water, the precipitation, rainfall, this chart that we print now, we do now.
I mean, this is work you've worked on over the last 5 or 6 years. I think you've really developed this very nicely.
My thought would be is that, this is one piece that gets made, and that I use 4 of the wells that are on this list now, and I make the big 4. And what I would consider doing is taking 4 of the near shore wells and have that information breaking out where what's the level of the water in the near shore areas of the
Well, I mean, I think that breaking out the water, the water reserve in your shore areas starts to become like the no-brainer. I do question though, Doug,
Yeah.
part of what Joe was bringing up was that water usage goes back into the ground. So he was saying, what behavior are you really influencing? Are you concerned to influence? I've been sensitized just by Ken's experience, the concept that dewatering in construction processes is the sort of thing that causes damage to the neighboring.
So there's your own
Neighboring wells.
dewatering if you use
Sorry?
too much of it.
Well, you know,
Basically, if your usage is high in a questionable period of time, that's, it's droughtage, in the near shore area, you could do your own well in very quickly. With-
Right, yes,
and
you or your neighbor, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
the reality is that the big four really don't feed our near shore area.
Right. 'cause
there's
they're-
one of these
they're-
wells that monitor.
They really don't feed.
Right.
It doesn't help us in
So they're
Silver
not
Beach
good.
have a full well in the golf course, for instance.
So what Greg is saying is the right choice, which is
Yeah.
to also have some sort of measure that's solely dependent on monitoring that's going on.
This is the
in these shore
discussion
areas.
part that we should have with the town when we bring it to them, because we've always had an issue,
Mhm.
in having different levels of things for the island, because people would like one.
Well, yeah, we're trying not to be, we don't want to suddenly invite everybody to say, well, he can do it, why can't I do it?
Right.
Why, you don't want the parts of the town fighting with
That's
each
gonna
other.
happen.
Okay, but.
Put your dukes up if you want to fight about it.
So I know
But
that the
it can
different.
work, it can work conversely.
Yeah.
Not that people are fighting, but that people realize in their community, they need to
We're
act
trying to
different.
protect them.
That's it.
So,
Yeah.
and that's, but then a lot of that is gonna be the messaging.
Yeah.
How are we gonna message
I
that
know.
to different areas and say, this is for the benefit of
One
your
second, Doug.
area?
Yeah, Doug.
Yeah, I just want to say that this is not something that, we've concocted. I can say that when people in our community are perceived to be wasting water by their neighbors, I hear about it.
I get that.
So this is not something that is, being construed or, our community thinks about this,
Mhm.
and it is very important to people. They watch illegal watering, when you're running more than one surface sprinkler, et cetera. And even if people perceive that their neighbor is topping up their pool with well water. So
Mhm.
I think that the WAC needs to be responsive to this. And that's why, it's really important to be able to make a call the way we've been discussing on the subcommittee, as opposed to staying with what those strict empirical criteria to make a call on water conservation because of the drought
Empirical.
condition.
Well, yeah, again, but we want to not be arbitrary, right? So are you in agreement with the strategy that Greg was sort of outlining, which is to include nearshore, a separate measure apart from this big four idea
Yes,
that reflects?
yes, I am.
And Greg, do you feel like you have an instinct for like how to begin to like, can you call out four more wells that?
Yeah, I think, we got the, grab the near shore and, speak with Doug and with Ken, and we can come up, there's, I think we could work out.
How are you gonna, with
Go
this
ahead.
monitoring, these monitoring wells for nearshore areas, right? Would we ask the USGS to put them in? Yes,
No,
they're already there.
they're already in. It's just that, the background, and, this is years ago now. The focus that John Holman had was, all you got to do is measure, I forget, it was, it wasn't Menantic, it was one of the wells that we have that starts with an M, and that was the most important well. If you measure that one, don't bother all the other ones.
Yeah, Manhasset.
Yeah, that sounds right. So then what I said, well, I'll take the next, I'll take four, the the highest 4 wells and do those.
Yeah,
I did not stretch that out to do the rest, you know, that's it.
That was the origin of the concept of the.
That's the origin of having the big 4 wells.
But now what we're saying is we need to modify that and have a little 4 well.
so we call it shallow wells and near shore wells.
What are the little 4 wells on here?
I haven't, exactly, it could be Rocky Point, it could be,
And are they true representation of nearshore areas?
It has to do with that depth of the well.
yeah,
And we should have that on our chart up here, it's a well depth.
Yes, I think we asked for that once
No,
before.
we don't have that.
I have that well, I have that here.
We do
if you
have it
want
somewhere.
You know, it's, yeah, here, if you
I
want.
made it up.
I don't think that we need to figure it out this minute. It's not
Right.
pertinent to going through the rest.
Let you guys
But there
continue,
are
but
little,
this is
there
the
are
goal, right?
4 little wells on here that could be used.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
And we have a history on them, which isn't, you know, if you don't have history,
Yeah.
then you got trouble.
Can you identify them right now,
Here they are.
briefly?
But it's 4 of those. There's 12 or 13
Near
things
shore
there.
area, shallow well.
So Manhasset well, number 1?
Look at the depth.
No, Manhasset well, it is, I don't think we need to do this now, but if we
No, we
wish.
don't, but I want to get a better eye. So it would be like Brander, which is obviously
Yes.
near shore,
I
and
think that
Silver Beach Tennis Court.
Yes.
So those are 2 identifiably
Right.
right?
small depth wells.
Shallow.
Shorewood,
Shorewood.
Shorewood, definitely. Shorewood would
That's a big
be one that I
indicator.
do.
but that's not really near shore.
Shorewood is pretty
It
close.
doesn't have to be near shore, we're talking depth.
It's a-
And then South
I
Bonanza.
thought we were talking near
It
shore.
would, I would think I consider it to be that, you know, though, it's not that high in elevation, you know.
Right.
It's in
and-
the kettle holes, it might be
Yeah,
a good one.
the kettle
It's
holes.
a lot of fluctuation.
Yeah,
So just let me get this straight. Are we looking for shallow wells, or are we looking for the usage in the near shore areas where there's the risk of salt intrusion? What exactly, I'm confused about what we're looking for.
Express your question more clearly. What would it?
Well, in other words, by identifying these 4 smaller wells,
Mhm.
are we looking at the well depth as an indicator of potential saltwater intrusion? When it comes to this,
at this point in
as
time,
the reason for creating a drought status, is that what we're looking for?
It has to do with limited amount of water.
All right, so it's just the limited amount of water.
Water for an individual. You may not be on the shoreline right there in that spot,
Okay,
but you only have so much water under you. The water you use is inside your pipe, in essence. That's the available
Right.
water.
I got you.
So if it's a short pipe with a 4-inch diameter, the volume of water in there is not that great, so you can pump that with a half-horsepower motor down quite quickly. When that happens, then you begin to draw water from a surrounding area.
All right, so I just wanted to be clear about this designation, that we're looking at smaller depth, shorter wells. We're not just looking at near shore areas.
We're
looking at both.
They're the same thing. Basically, it's the same thing.
Well, Deer Park is not.
Well, then take
The
it
water
off of
in
it.
Kettle Holes is
Then take it
not.
off of it.
I'm just saying.
Yeah, I'm
you know.
saying, you know, the part that really is affecting, and from my perspective, is near shore areas that are low in elevation.
And potentially cut off from pressure from the big 4, like Silver Beach would be, because you're around a peninsula, right?
There's very little, few places that I know that are fed by the by the center. And like people like to think that there's a big deep aquifer, and it's not a bowl. Described by one of our people who wrote up as it's a saucer of water. It's not a bowl of water that we have in the center of our island because of the clay layers that we have down there. Prevents that Herzog equation of,
Right.
1 foot up, 40 feet down. We
Right.
don't have that.
But we do have a very, with 80 feet of depth of water underneath us here.
In a couple areas only, yeah.
Okay, I didn't want to sidetrack the conversation. I just wanted to get clear in my mind what exactly we were talking about. So,
But before you get there, the 80 feet of water that we have under us,
Mhm.
okay, it's not 80 feet of water.
Mhm.
When you have sand and gravel and everything else in there, you
It's a
only have like a
mixture, right,
third
right,
of that that's liquid. so to
Right, it's
speak.
not, right, it's not a
So,
tank.
to try and get the right perception to our audience,
Mhm.
they need to understand this pool that we're drawing from, in
And
my
that it's,
mind.
and
yeah.
that it's very shallow.
And it's not as much as we
Right.
think it is.
And it isn't a literal pool, it's also water that is running between layers.
It's greater sand, it's
So, I mean,
gravel.
but I think that in regards to perception, people think of it as this big bowl of water.
Yes.
It's absolutely not.
It's not, no, it's not.
Thank you, Greg. I marked on here.
Now, that's the idea that we're trying to get across here, and there are sensitive areas.
Right, so I had we're going to find ourselves not able to do item 6 on the agenda that well, just because Joe is not with us. But we, years ago, in 2018-19, we'd been in a discussion with the USGS about putting in a monitoring well for saltwater intrusion for the near shore. They have come back to us, Fred Stone has come back to us with a revised version of that proposal. At the time, as I recall, it was partly to calibrate the magnetic imaging that we had done of the salt. But however, their feeling is it's the best way to directly measure the potential for saltwater intrusion in the peninsular nearshore areas.
Potentiometer.
So therefore, while we're not going to discuss it in this meeting, it's obviously relevant to this discussion. And it will come back in our next meeting when Joe is with us. So we have the possibility of a different study approach.
This is the baseline plus.
This would,
Yeah.
Peter, where was this, where is this information?
sorry,
This proposal?
so we don't have
We
it
don't
yet,
have
Joe
it.
has it.
Joe has it,
And
okay,
Joe was going to
All right.
present it and he got sick this morning.
got it.
So we're
So Peter,
deferring
can
it
he
for next
distribute
month.
that to all of us, please, so that we can read it ahead of time?
Yes, I think that makes sense. So I will note.
The one thing in terms of lining this out with that study that was
Right.
done by Fred is,
Right,
you know, there's the upconing and there's the horizontal.
Right.
Lateral.
Right.
And I think probably our concern is mostly because it's near shore, is not so much upconing, because that depends very much on how much water you pump out, you know, to bring it up. The lateral, I think, pretty much would be more or less the same in over an area. So I think when we go into this, we need to think about, are we talking?
Oh, we're talking about upconing or
About
talking about
coming in.
You're
intrusion
talking, the
and
lateral
sea
being
level
the saltwater
rise?
intrusion.
I heard two
Yeah,
people
yeah,
speaking.
go ahead.
The lateral being the saltwater intrusion, that's what we want to look at more so than the upconing.
Yes.
They work together in my head.
They work together.
But-
They work together, but in truth, you know, you know, a very, very high tide over 2 days because of a storm, a hurricane that bounced past us. We have some water in the streets and the salt water is pushing in.
Right,
on
and the idea
perimeter.
would be that a well somewhat back from the shoreline will actually, by running a magnetic charge down the casing, will allow us to see has the saltwater interface changed position.
Excuse me, there are areas in Silver Beach that are low. Look at the FEMA map and you'll see them. I'm in one of them. I am right now in what they call the transition zone of that saltwater thing right now. My salt content is 249, okay? Max is 250.
Yeah, right.
Okay, so,
But who's counting?
yeah, but who's counting? But the point of it is that it depends where you are. More so than anything.
Yeah, I have concern about the USGS proposal, which is that it's going to be, you know, you'll have a well here. And if you're here, it may not be relevant to you. Right?
There are
So-
several, like, when the
They had
moment you talk
originally
about
proposed 4
saltwater intrusion of the typical kind that you like to talk about regarding being pushed in like that, storms are the ones that, to me, really do that. Day-to-days, all that volume and inertia and everything, they don't do a hell of a lot.
You're
Pumping
concerned.
your own well a lot
Mhm,
does it quickly, can get you down into saltwater
mhm.
in.
But you're also
in
saying
neutral.
storm, so you're saying that
That's the biggest-
overland intrusion.
That's the biggest one in my mind. That's the guy that can come in 10, 20 feet into the shoreline area for some period of time
Mhm.
and push back, that's where your weight comes in. Super high tides, 10-foot high, that really is tremendous amount of weight and pushing against it. Not tidal, but surge.
So you were thinking
Right.
that there should be a criteria or a category for,
We'll know when we get a
Effects?
storm like that.
no, but I'm just saying when it comes to even this,
Hey, you're gonna know it, I mean.
Drought monitor.
You are going to know it, and the question is there behavior, is there something that we can do differently, either before that
Yeah,
happens?
fill your bathtub.
Or after that happens? Well,
Yeah,
if the storm is
well,
coming,
Fill your bathtub.
You can't
right.
fight the pressure. So if you're
You
gonna.
can't fight the
have that much
pressure, right.
pressure coming from a storm surge.
It's going to happen no matter what.
Yes, right.
Which would mean that the only thing you could have done that was smart ahead of time was not just fill your bathtub, but fill like big tanks behind your, like have water towers, have
No.
have
this is-
available
no,
water.
This comes back to water availability in emergency situations.
Right,
That is my old bugaboo, that we don't have.
that we have not been producing
And that's a
storage of
very
water.
real- that's a
right.
real goal that we can work toward.
I mean, if we have a big storm this year with a super high surge and a full moon,
You could see it
there are
happening.
going to be people that want to have a place to get water.
And then there's no place to go and get water with.
Not,
your- Right.
not as an official, like
Right.
coming to church. I mean, Presbyterian church is where I go, when I had my problem. And they're
Did
really,
you?
yeah.
Yeah, but you have to look at what the availability is as far as how much any one locale can pump. You can't open any place up to the public to get water if they have, a well
It
that
has to
isn't
be
going
a
to,
good
has no
well. It has to
capacity.
be a good well.
Well, it has to have a very good capacity to service
Right.
that many people. And so my suggestion would be, what do other communities do with regards to emergency water sourcing?
Tank.
Right, I mean, we've gone now well past items 1, 2, and 3, and the rainfall report and 4, the subcommittee report back. And it brings us to, we're being asked by the board to review a storage tank that Gardens Bay Country Club now wants to put in place. And I actually think that that's not irrelevant to the discussion. Did we print that out? Or do you all have got it?
I saw it somewhere.
I have it on my computer.
You might even, Jessica, could Lisa share and throw it up on the screen?
And I have
This is their proposal.
a few questions with regards to this, because this is
We're being asked to kind of look at this, so let's take a look at this.
as far as I can see, this is only the permit for
Yes.
the pump house and for the retention,
The storage.
storage tank.
You
Correct.
go all the way to the bottom is the site plan, I think, if that's the same file that I have.
Here, are you able
Yes.
to do share
Yeah.
screen?
Peter, it's on the website, if anybody.
Oh, it's on the website. Could you put it up then?
Yeah,
It's actually in discussion documents. That's great. So let's put that up.
I mean, it's all pretty set, with regards to the information that they filled out. So the question has to be more, my questions have to do more with, what did the original submission, application say? Because the DEC requested that they provide more information, and I don't see that we have that. And I think that information is very important to this.
Yeah, it's
How so?
Well, they asked, the DEC, I have to go back in my files here to find it, and I don't know what's happening right now. But they requested a breakdown. How much is being pumped per day? What is the capacity of the wells on a daily basis? So that all,
But all of that was in relation to the idea of pumping more water.
yeah,
Right.
But
This is not.
This is the storage.
this is still under
This is the
the
same- this is
application
the
for
ori-
12 million gallons.
No.
Well, that's not what it
If
says.
you read down to the bottom, you'll see that this is not to do with.
Yeah, this is a 116,000 gallon storage.
Yes, that's the cistern and the pump.
Right, so all that they want is us to say, are we okay with the idea that they can put in the ground a large storage tank, slowly fill it, and
Yeah.
use it as a way to buffer their consumption of the same 6 million gallons that they already are pumping. They're not asking to pump any additional water.
Okay, I have to find it. I don't want to spend time doing, you
Right.
guys can talk. I will spend time because that application was
Yeah, I understand they're not, they're
submitted
not-
with this, so I just want to be clear on that. That we're,
Yeah, so there,
Hey, Peter, just a question. Is the only thing we have this plan view of the project? There's no other words?
so are you seeing it on this? I mean, it's in the discussion documents. It's got
There it is.
a fair amount of words. And it has a letter describing its intent at the end.
Thank you.
And there's a couple versions of the site
An
plan.
email to all.
There's at least 3 versions of the site plan. They added additional equipment to the drawing 3 times.
How do we know which one is the final version or the one there?
You got to look at the corner at the date, I presume, anyway, that there's a date of, an issue date on the corner of the drawing. They're all C1, but then it's C1 and it's different dates.
The one from 1/14/25 is the latest one.
Okay.
That makes sense, yes.
so in this package, there's the short environmental assessment form. Part 1, project information. And if this is no longer part of the submission, I'll understand, but if you look, the brief description of proposed action, it says the club is proposing to increase withdrawal to 12 million gallons per year. So there is an increase of 6 million gallons a year. They are currently licensed for 6.
What is it that,
Application, Lisa.
that's not the application we're being asked to review.
This is what was sent in, this is what we got.
What's the date?
This is what we got as part of the package.
Their original proposal.
No, she's saying this.
No.
is-
That's not what
Doesn't-
Lisa's saying.
Okay, go ahead. I'm on, I feel like I'm on the same document.
I'm on this here, okay, application for special permit.
Right.
Okay, that's all.
Right. And then
Boiler.
keep going down, what page or should I look at?
Keep going down, and then you get the 11/20/24 from Gardner's Bay regarding the site plan review at Gardner's Bay Country Club, asking for the permit for the cistern and the pump house. Then you keep going down,
Right,
and there's a notice of disapproval because that they didn't apply, or they didn't include those 2
Right.
items in the original proposal. Then you get down, the next piece of paper is the short environmental assessment form, right there.
right, I see what you're looking at.
Okay, so
Uh-huh.
that the description of the proposed action still it takes the inclusion of the 12 million gallons per year. It's in
Can
there,
you magnify this image, please?
yeah.
There it is under the description, I see it.
So what I want to know, is this still relevant? And is this still a part of the project? Because if it is,
Right, so again, so I did speak to Jay and asked him, and he was saying all that they're interested in us discussing at this stage is the storage component. Only the storage component, not the increase in,
so that's not going to be part of the conversation then?
well, I don't believe we're being asked to approve additional pumping.
Well, then why is that is part of this application?
It is true that it's at the end of the application.
And not only that, but I think that the cistern that's being requested or proposed is a great idea. And we asked them for
right,
that,
right.
and it's wonderful, but it's only going to take care of 2% of, and I know, this is,
Right, very small.
but
It's just a buffer for them.
it is, and it's only 2% capacity, and I don't know, how often does that turn over, that 116,000 gallons? How long does it take to go through that?
Just so you know, this piece here was signed on 8/4/22, and I believe the one that we received, that Jessica also sent out, is from January of this year.
This is
So
what
this portion of the document anyway is not, it's been slipped in here.
I think it's the wrong EAF. I think it's for their original application, which sort of died, which was to
Yeah, I
increase
think you're right.
their flow. Because there's actually 2 EAFs in here. There's the one up at the beginning of the application, which looks like it reflects this current ask of the 116,000 gallons. That looks correct, but then it looks like there's another EAF from the previous application that also got slipped into this, which is a different ask.
Okay, so that extra 6, that site plan information is no longer part of that.
And in my conversation with Jay, who signed this one, he said that he was definitely, this is not the additional 6 million.
That's fine. I'm glad we
Right.
cleared that up, because
Right.
I'm reading it and saying, okay, this is not,
But why did they send that other thing to us? That makes no sense.
So, did they?
Ask them tonight at the public hearing.
ask them. That
Okay.
would be good to know.
All right, but so if we can, using pages like 1 through 5, and then the letter that follows. As you said, and I also want to say, it is great if they do
Oh, it's wonderful.
storage. So they're pumping more slowly. The intent is to decrease the impact downstream on the aquifer.
It's what we asked
Right.
a year ago, and they've come back with that.
Right. And so just that part of things, we're all like, I don't know if any of us have any question about whether this is good or a bad thing. From my point of view, that part of the proposal is an unalloyed good thing for them to be doing.
Right, the idea was during the periods that's low usage and we have lots of water in the aquifer,
Mhm,
why not pump it into an aquifer or a tank?
And also all the time, even when they've used their tank,
Right.
slowly be filling the tank,
Always.
even when they're not watering.
That's right.
So
And what
just,
they want to do is they want to water quickly, because, and part of that has to do with, in golf course maintenance,
Right.
is to prevent disease. Like, you don't want to
Right.
always just have
Yeah.
water sitting on the ground. So they want to water quickly, have it just will be taken up, but they don't want to pull from the aquifer.
I want to be very clear that this 116,000 gallon tank
Mhm.
is still under the application, or the total allowability of them.
The 6 million
The 6
original,
million.
they've been, right.
I want to make very clear that that's exactly what,
And I think.
because they did say that there was an old well that isn't functioning,
Mhm.
and they wanted to put in 2 new wells. So what happened to that? Is this old well that is not functioning correctly still in use? And is this going to mitigate that? Those are just questions.
No,
I
those
would
are really
have.
important questions, and we should go, and we will be bringing Gardner's Bay Country Club in to talk to us at a later point, but Jay has a letter that's attached. It's basically after you get to page 5, and since he's not here, I'm just going to read it real quickly. In our building permit application, we asked for 2 items, one being a 116,000 gallon underground water storage tank for our pump station that will supply existing golf course irrigation. The other is a small garage building, 15 feet by 25 feet, which will house the pumps and electrical equipment. We ask that we be given conditional approval to install the underground tank as soon as possible to allow for tank construction and piping before the cold weather prevents such work, and all while the above ground building follows along the site plan review process. So site plan review process is still going on. Our use is not expanded, so I'll underline.
I know, I get that. I know that.
Our
that's
use
what
is
it
not
says.
expanded. We are not allowed by NYS DEC permit to pump. We are allowed by the NYS DEC permit to pump 6 million gallons of our water annually. Our use has not changed. Irrigation system is not expanded but upgraded. That has not changed in section 8210. In subsection C, it states golf course tees and greens, irrigated fairways existing as of 2003 shall be exempt from the requirements of this chapter. Our exemption has not changed. Section 82(6)C furthers that a grandfathered turf irrigation system may be replaced partially or entirely within the existing irrigated area so long as the replacement improves the efficiency of the system. This is our intent to improve our delivery system. The system upgrade of 116,000 gallon cistern and pump station improves the efficiency by the following means. A, it is redundancy to the sole irrigation supply well. buys us some time in case one of our wells fails and until we can get a redundant well permitted.
Our one well fails, so they're still
Right.
working off that one.
One well.
Yeah. thank you.
B, it will
Stress
provide
well.
us with the ability to slowly deliver water to the cistern, thereby reducing potential saltwater intrusion into the aquifer. This is pretty much self-explanatory. C, it will allow faster delivery of water, thereby reducing disease pressure and pesticide applications. It currently takes 12 hours to water on cycle. Having the ability to reduce that time to even pump for an hour on and off, letting the aquifer rest and recover is an improvement. D, it will allow us the ability to capture surface or stormwater runoff for reuse, which so is a gain in the amount of water. Our irrigation surpasses the efficiency of those codes listed in section 82.5. We use an ET meter to monitor the weather and only water as needed based on environmental conditions. Our system far exceeds those required by code for efficiency and installed on town property. In closing, I would appreciate an approval to have a determination for conditional approval. Thank you for your time and understanding, Jay Card. And I think Jay Card for this year has stepped back from being irrigation chair for GVCC, but we'll have that discussion.
I mean, I think this is wonderful. The only other question I would have is where it's located, which seems to be where their primary well is, which is right on the border of the residential zone.
Mhm.
And, they're gonna have a building there. And they also said they're gonna have a berm with fescue grass, so I just wonder about the aesthetics of
Well, it's
placing
buried.
the pump house in that area.
This is a buried device.
Right, but there's a pump house that's gonna go over top of it.
This is the plastic lattice work device.
Right, but there's a pump house that's gonna go on top of it. It's a building.
Over the whole area? No, I don't think so.
No, not over the
This
whole
is
area.
small.
A small building,
It's a small
pump house.
Yeah, I mean, it's in here, if you look at it.
20 by 30 or something, or a little less
I'm just
smaller, yeah.
saying
I
that
agree, it's not,
you
it's
might
not,
get some pushback from people saying,
I can see
I
it.
got another thing to look at. Just,
yeah, I mean,
that's
if
not us.
if you were that person that says, I used to be able to look out and see the sun come up over Gardner's Bay, and now I'm looking at a pump house.
there you go.
Okay, let me take, the value, I'm gonna go and ask for a redo on my valuation, because I just lost 50 grand.
Yeah, so anyhow, that's a good point as to where the location of this is. Because when we walked the property, he said, here's where we want to put maybe the cistern, but it's something.
It's over their existing
We
line.
never really talked about the location of
Yeah.
the pump house.
All right,
Okay.
but unless I'm missing what I'm hearing, well, okay, first of all, Dave Ruby, who is always attuned to these, has his
Yes,
hand,
Dave.
these topics. So Dave, did you want to make a comment? Dave?
He passed out.
He's muted.
Dave, you're muted, Dave, so if you're speaking, there you
How's
go.
that? Can you hear me?
There you are.
Good afternoon, folks.
Good
I'd
afternoon.
like to draw your attention to the last, as Greg mentioned, the C1 site plan, which is changing. The previous site plan had no stormwater collection or very little. And now the current revision has 3 different branches of stormwater collection, which in my view is just a renaming of rainwater collection. And by doing so, I think they're going to be reducing the amount of recharge into the aquifer and pumping it for irrigation. And that's the current revision of the plan, which just came in on the 14th. I just looked at it a few days ago. By reducing, that's going to reduce the recharge into the aquifer and increase the potential for lateral intrusion. The second point is I'm not convinced in the engineering documents that have been submitted that this rainfall collection and pumping into the cistern will be counted as part of the DEC limit. I think it's designed so that it will work around the DEC limit so that they will be able to pump 16 million gallons from the aquifer and any number of gallons from the cistern.
I agree with you, Dave.
I agree with that.
I completely agree that this will be additional. It'll be additional pumpage.
It will be additional,
It will be an additional source of water.
because they're
Because the
routing some
permit,
water.
I would have, I mean, you'd have to look at the permitting for this.
Mhm.
But the permitting for pumps, you know, and how much you can actually draw is a whole nother process, another whole process from the DEC. So we don't see any evidence of what permitting process there is from the DEC for this.
For
This system, for the water coming in.
For collecting.
then
water,
distribution.
For collecting.
Yes, because you're not taking it out of the aquifer.
No, you're not.
You're taking it from from rain.
Right,
So it's a different requirement for that.
right.
It might be.
So what we're saying is that
So I'm
there's
agreeing with you, Dave.
So what we're saying is that Dave is raising a question that we think it's reasonable for the board to ask, which is the rainwater collection adding to the total amount of
Yes.
water that you can make use of?
My understanding is that they're only regulated for what they draw out of the ground.
Exactly.
So if they're not drawing it out of the ground and they're collecting it and reusing it, it doesn't count against their draw from the ground. You know, it doesn't.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's a slough.
Which is not in of itself a bad thing, but it does take away from the recharge of the area.
But I also believe that the DEC doesn't have jurisdiction on this particular application for the cistern. Just FYI, because it's not.
Right.
But the board does. But the board does.
Yes, we do, but I don't believe the DEC does.
Right. So, okay, so then, what are we asking then? Are we saying that it would be fine as long as you use the amount that you collect to reduce the amount that you're pumping?
It's a little early to be saying we're okay with it. You know,
No, no,
there's somebody,
I'm
you know,
asking.
you just said, are we okay, you know, you said, are we okay?
Right, well, I'm asking.
The question, yeah.
I think what I'm asking is, I'm fine with this, but I would like to know what more water will be used from that area, even though it's not coming from the aquifer, it's still water that would go into the aquifer. So how much more water will be used for their system? Okay, if you take that 100, and you could probably do this, I can, that 116,000 gallons,
Mhm.
how long does it take to drain? What does it look like in actual water load?
Probably hours.
Now, during the 8 months or 6 months that they use for irrigation, and when it's drought and there's a lot of evaporation, probably a lot more. This time of year, there's not going to be much usage at all. But all I'm asking is, let's look at, I'd like to know how much water does that actually represent?
I mean, and I have not done this yet, but Dave is on the phone and is on the, you know, Dave put together and he has an explanation month by month how much water is being consumed and spread out onto the course. So there is a number there, and frankly, I don't know if 116,000 represents 2 days or 20
Exactly.
days.
Dave, would you have any idea? Or would you be able to calculate that?
Under the, under the 12 million gallon plan, this represents 1 day's worth of irrigation.
So under the 6 million gallon plan, it's 2 days.
I probably,
Okay, thank you, that's good to know. 2 days. So you'd have
out
this,
of, I
You
forget
have
how
to
many,
promise.
it's 100-something irrigation events, I believe, in the that was in the application for the 12 million. I don't have it handy, I'm sorry, but.
that's okay. So you
But
just,
It's a piece of information
I'd just like to-
that we want to draw back, pull that back into the conversation, Dave.
Yeah, I'd like to just maybe if I can clarify the difference between Peter's idea of the storage lake and this. I mean, the critical thing in my thinking is that Peter's lake would be filled during the off season and would be used almost as the major source of water. And that was a significant body of water. I calculated it was about 1/4 of the fresh pond in terms of water. This isn't anywhere near that. And I think
It's a small tank, relatively speaking.
the crucial question is, would Gardiner's Bay install the cistern only? without any stormwater collection or rainfall collection. Would that?
In other words,
would that be-
you would see no objection if that's what was being proposed.
Right, my concern is that they will be gathering rainwater, which is, I think Lisa's correct, and that it's, or I guess Meg, gathering rainwater and irrigating with that, that is exempt from the DEC limit. And that will be going on during the summer over a number of significant rainfall events, pumped into the cistern and then irrigated when used for irrigation. I was talking with Ken briefly about the number of, to see if we could get the number of times that significant rainfall occurs such that you might be collecting water into the drain system. It's not easily available, but at least the brief synopsis of last year's weather service was that there were 30-something rainfall events that produced over a ½ inch of rain, which would be a significant rainfall. And as Jay has shown us in a number of videos, that rainfall is running down the gully where they intend to do the water collection. So 30 times a year, they're going to be collecting rain, filling the cistern. So that would be 30 times 100,000 gallons. That's a lot of water. So if you add that on top of the 6 million gallons, I think.
Now, Jay would have just, I appreciate that you are talking about more water, and I see the, concern. There would be, Jay would characterize a lot of that water as water that would run off into the bay.
Well, I'd characterize it, as Lisa said, that would be water that would run into should be running into the aquifer.
Well,
Some of it.
some of it would go to the aquifer, some of it's going to be lost.
So much should go forward more.
Evaporation.
Because it's
Well,
Okay, wait, well, hold on, Meg.
That's where,
Let's let Meg.
hydrologists should be brought in to assess the situation.
Yeah, we definitely want to be
We're not
factually based.
qualified. I'm not qualified to say, to.
No, but you're raising a good question. So Meg,
Right.
you had
Oh, I was just saying that I was there for an event over the summer and we ended up with a huge rainfall and it turned into 2 rivers running through the golf course, going down the street and into the wetlands. So
going into the
More
bay,
than enough,
essentially.
yeah, into the bay. So there's definitely more than enough surface area to collect and recharge water and not even enough to capture all the water that's there and keep it there. So, I think the amount that would get caught is probably insignificant compared to the amount of area that you have to absorb, depending on the speed of the rainfall.
So what you're saying is that the bulk of the water that's running, that would be captured is water that would be lost.
Could be.
Well,
Yeah.
I'll disagree with that. Perhaps this is a very awkward situation to have over the computer. I could bring in the chart, the C1 chart, and show you where there are other areas in the center that are proposed that are nowhere near the wetlands.
So you're saying there are areas you're concerned would actually be recharge areas that they would be drawing from?
Correct.
Okay.
Or could.
Right, so guys, I mean, you're gonna have the conversation with the country club, so, I mean, to my eye, there's a compromise here somewhere. There's a certain amount which, I mean, if they
Real
take
waste
all of
of
it, if they take all of it and they say, give us, that gives us back credit for an extra 600,000 gallons or whatever Dave's math was there, versus, some portion of that we assume would be lost. And we can see this as added, so maybe, anyway, it seems to me like.
All right, I did a very simple
Right,
mathematical computation based on
what Dave was saying.
refilling that every 2 days, refilling the basin or the cistern every 2 days. Because there's, I think somewhere in the application, it was 185 days of irrigation that was required. So I just cut that down to 60 days. Times 116,000 gallons, and I come up with 6,960,000 gallons.
Right. And they're
Of
not, they're
use.
all, well, they're only allowed to pump 6 million. Right,
to draw from the aquifer.
right.
But this is captured from precipitation.
Some of it is,
No, it all is. If they don't have a well
no,
filling that cistern,
they are filling it with a well.
they are.
Yes, that's the idea, is to slowly fill it from the aquifer.
Oh, so they're
That is their idea, is to buffer their
drawing from the
aquifer use
well.
into the cistern. It's not a water capture system.
Okay,
It's a shifting.
It's
All right,
so they're just
clear.
trying to time delay
yep, I get it. All right.
now, but at the same time,
Yeah.
Dave's not wrong, because the mention here is made that in addition to what's being pumped,
Right.
would be some that would be capturable. The language that Jay used,
So I'm not real sure what the advantage of this cistern is then,
so the,
except to delay.
to allow them to pump fast when they water, to avoid disease, to.
That's the only
water-
advantage.
And wash nutrients into the soil right away, into the
And-
grass right away.
Right, and to slow down.
And to not cause saltwater
Intrusion.
intrusion by
Okay.
pumping too fast from the aquifer.
And you mentioned that right now they operate with one well. And I believe that the plan still has 2 new wells. So they're basically creating a very large well field, if you will.
Well, that's not on.
Yes, I don't,
Right,
it's
and
one of the
not
many
what we're
things that
being
aren't
asked
really
to
clear.
comment on, yeah.
The 2 things, and I'll put it on the record, and so maybe we can get this to them and they can come up with what they want to say. You know, the drawings and the information provided is very fine, but it does not explain what the operating plan is. We're saying they're going to take water from here to there and, you know, but is that what is that?
No, they are clearly saying they're going to pump to fill, to use faster.
And yes, and then there's water that we're capturing and bringing up.
So
Okay, so what's
the comment where that comes in
I
is
didn't
this
see that at all.
point D that Jay writes. He says, is his last item, it will also allow us the ability to capture surface or stormwater runoff for reuse. It does not say that they're going to. Now, Dave has brought that in as part of a Plan C, you know, and a separate plan, site plan.
Yeah.
Which is, you know.
We don't have that.
Directing.
That's it. We need clarity on that, and we
Right.
need what their plan really is. And then the second thing
Well,
is,
so hold on a second, let's try to get to some consensus about parts of this. So let's just say for a moment that we were to disallow this point D. That is, we don't approve of the idea of capturing surface water or runoff water. I don't know that we don't approve of it. I actually think it's a smart idea in some
But-
ways, but it could have.
But we don't have a plan
Impacts.
saying how they're going to do that.
Right.
So
So
we
the
can't approve or
question,
disapprove.
so the question I would ask the board to ask GBCC is, I understand that this would allow the ability to capture surface water in a holding tank, but are you asking us to approve that now? Or do you just want the holding tank filled from the allowable pumped water?
that's, and the.
If they only were doing that, we're disregarding point D, that they would be, the possibility to the ability to capture surface water or stormwater runoff, knowing that it's there now, but if they're only pumping and buffering their use, is there any objection to is there any reason to object? Dave, is there any reason to object if they're not doing water capture?
But they have to be, that's what a cistern does.
No, the cistern is capturing from the pumping. It's a buffering
Not
system.
always.
That's what it's,
This is, I believe,
That's-
what's being proposed is a buffer to their main pumping.
When I look at
kind of
the
shifting that
site,
Because I agree with you. It's, you know, like we're making some assumptions there
Mm-hmm.
that, oh, this is what they are, this is how they're going to operate this system.
If you
But
look-
we don't know that really.
and we
So-
also,
and-
if you look at the way that the engineers, whatever you call it, pictures, it's a permeable surface here. That seems to allow rainwater.
On the roof, you mean?
Not on the roof.
The top
because-
of the?
No, I don't know.
No, she's saying the whole area.
It goes through, if you look, just check out this that we got sent, okay? This is the rendition that the engineer submitted. I am not an engineer. I'm having a hard enough time reading this, but to my knowledge, that this is acting as a retention device for precipitation as well. Some type of, I'm going to call it mesh system on the top with earth over it that seems to indicate that the water goes into the earth, into the mesh, and then into the tank. Somebody else look at this, please, and then tell me if I'm wrong. It's not an enclosed system. It's open from the top, and that's going to allow them to catch water.
So again, you're looking at the diagrams from the 2 years ago proposal.
I don't, whether it's 2 years ago or whether it's this new, no, this is the cistern diagram. This is not the diagram.
Well,
This is the cistern.
it's just,
You go right in there. That's the
Yeah.
proposal for the cistern and the
Right.
pump house. So that is the diagram. You go all the way down, and if you really look at this, if you have an engineer's
right.
understanding, great. I don't necessarily.
Right,
But then you will have a better idea of what this is going to do. It's not just pumping, but it's accepting it. That's
We're in alignment. You and I are in alignment.
okay, so
Clarity.
we can only speak conditionally. There seems to be no problem, as far as the WAC can see, in pumping and filling the tank within the limits, the constraints they're already living under, 6 million gallons only.
yeah.
But usage as a collection station, although it's a small collection station, makes things more complicated for us to feel comfortable with. Am I
It's the operational listing,
right?
the operations, we don't
Am I
know.
still online?
You are, Dave. Do you have a comment about this distinction between gathering water? You know, you raised the question.
That's exactly where I would go. If you go to the last page, the C1 plan, if you have the current version, which is the January 13 or 14 release, you'll see there are three branches of the collection system. One is the current, one is proposed down the gully, if you want to call it that. And there are two other branches leading over to the clubhouse area. I don't know if that, is that,
Yes, I see that, Dave.
yeah.
There's
So
one there, and then it's almost circular, right?
The one to the clubhouse has two long branches.
Okay, this is what he's looking at. If you go all the way to the bottom,
Mhm.
you'll see that.
So, and I don't see anywhere that's almost on the center line of the aquifer, of the dividing line of the aquifer. I don't see anywhere how that is near the wetlands area. And so if it's only to kind of scoop up the loose pennies that are on the ground, what's the purpose of those branches? I don't, engineering wise, technically, I don't see that can be called stormwater runoff. That's just rainfall collection.
Yeah.
Understood.
So if
So-
last point, if you
Yeah.
approve this, or if the town, I suppose, approves it,
Right.
is that, are you approving the whole kit and caboodle for that section also?
Right. So I think we don't have the qualifications to sort of make, like, there are a couple of judgments to be made here. How much of this is water that would be lost to runoff? How much of this is water that would otherwise recharge the aquifer? We don't have the ability to make those distinctions or calculations. But we do have the ability, yeah, Dave, go ahead.
The applicant should be able to answer those questions
Right.
first.
Right, but we do have the ability, again, based on Jay's summary, with the concern that point D does begin to speak to collection and how the operation of collection would work. But everything prior to point D, the idea that there's no increase in pumpage and that it's a buffering mechanism, that seems to be, we're all in agreement that there's no harm there.
Absolutely, I endorse that.
I'm not ready to say
You're
that
not
at
ready
this
to say
minute.
that that has no harm.
Then we just, you know, even there, we're looking at the drawings, you know, what's the operating procedures? How are they measuring the water? Now, if they have 3 wells, they're gonna have the 3 wells, and if they have, then they're gonna pump it into the cistern, and then they're gonna pump it out. Is that measured as well? What, you know, there's uncertainty there.
Everything they've pumped is metered. Everything they pump is metered, and that's where their
I'd like
6
to see
million
that.
gallons.
I'd like to see that listed. I'd like to see, you know, a conversation that says, yes, here, and here's what we're using, so
Right.
that the other thing is that I'd like to get an understanding if they have done any risk analysis on extreme weather events, and that would both be a rain, every 20, a 50-year rain event, and, you know, a 50-year drought event. Like, what happens if? That would be, I think I'd like to see that, and the measurements on the water. Because if you could wind up and say, hey, you know, you guys have now pumped 7 million gallons out of that, out of the cistern over the course of the year. Say, that's
Some of it was- some of it
that's
was
more than you were
capped.
allowed. Oh, no, we have 2 million gallons of water that we sucked up off the course.
And the DEC in 2022, and this is in our files from them. After technical review, the DEC found that additional information needed to be submitted, and they may have submitted this, I don't know. Underestimate the impacts of the wells operating at full capacity, the hours and days per week each well will be operating, and then clarification on how the tank is to be filled when empty gradually over time, expected pumping capacity, and the runtime that will be required. Utilizing the maximum rated pumping capacities of all 3 irrigation wells operating simultaneously. So they asked for a lot of, and assumes continuous withdrawal over the irrigation period of 183 days. In addition to saltwater upcoating, please provide an analysis of lateral saltwater intrusion. So, because they had used this, I can't remember, the Solon, whatever, that analysis that came from a paper back in 1996. Soren.
Mhm.
And so the DEC required an upgrade. It required, you know, more contemporary information. So this was all required, and this is good information that was required. And I think it's sort of necessary to factor that into what we can understand is as far as what's going on up there, you know, and how this can contribute to their overall usage.
Right. And so, absolutely, and again, my understanding was that we're only being asked about this preliminary request that they be permitted to put the cistern in place.
I would agree with Greg. I would like more information.
Mm-hmm.
I can itemize what I'd like to see first before making a decision,
Mm-hmm.
but I think we've kind of covered it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, so does anybody want to summarize what our recommendation then to the town is for tonight's discussion?
Can I, is the public hearing is starting tonight?
Starting tonight, but
So
it'll
does that
stay
mean-
open.
Huh?
It'll stay open.
And it'll stay open, and how long is it a long conversation tonight or a short
It'll
conversation?
depend on who shows up. I mean, if Gardner's Bay Country Club shows up to present and then answer questions, it could take a while.
Okay,
So I don't know. It'll
I
depend.
misunderstood, because in the agenda, it's like, you know, it's 6:08, you
gonna be a
open the
long
hearing, and 6:10, you go to the next hearing. I thought,
No.
is that, okay, so there is conversation tonight then?
Yes, there should be.
Okay.
I'd be surprised if there isn't.
Oh, surely.
Okay, and so what,
Stormwater catchment, that was one issue we wanted to talk about.
right?
What does that mean, right? As Dave pointed out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what does stormwater catchment mean, right?
And how is this going to, other than slowing down the distribution of water and reducing
So
the
slowing the
risk
pumping.
of saltwater intrusion,
Right,
how is this going to benefit them?
right.
I mean,
Although.
they're not, do they have to make an application for the ability to use water? But we've already decided or kind of come to the conclusion that if they're using water that's coming down as precipitation, then that's
some analysis has to be done about how much of that would be recharge and how much of that would be run.
And is that even going into this?
And, right,
I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's all pumped up from the aquifer. So how much is catch water and precipitation, and how much is it coming from the ground? That's, and if the answer is it's all coming from the ground,
right.
then I'm
It's
happy
simple.
with that.
Yeah,
Then it's simple, then they're in a simple
Just need
situation.
clarification on that.
Right.
It'd be very hard to quantify anything else when you think about it, just because of the variability, the range of.
Yes, but nevertheless, it probably is worth going further, not us now and not necessarily the board tonight, but it probably is worth going forward into this question about how much is runoff and how much
Oh,
is
just
recharge.
operability. We
And
don't,
how much runoff can be captured as opposed to recharge being captured.
I mean, if I've calculated, it's 51 days, you know, that if their water supply, if I understood, that it's 51 days of use that are in that tank. As if it wakes up and is magically refilled every night, it's only good for 51 days with the 6 million gallon requirement.
oh, I see what you're saying.
Limiting 6 million, if you take 6 million divided by 116,000, if I calculated that right,
51 days.
it's like 51 days worth of water, so.
2% of
Yeah.
the water requirements.
Okay. Well, what I'd like to see, I'd like to get a clearer understanding of the operating procedures that they plan to work by, with an understanding of what sources of measurement, where are the measurements being taken?
Right.
Are they going to be
Pumping
available?
measurements, and is there any other than pumped?
And are the, now you just interrupted my
Sorry.
flow there. I lost that one. The extreme events risks, it's like, I think it'd be good just for them as well, for somebody to sit down and say, what could happen if, and.
Right.
I-
Dave raised what he described as Peter's Lake. Extreme events, it would be great to fill a much larger thing than what they proposed here. So this is a small tank from us.
The economics just boggle my mind. I don't understand this expenditure for what the.
I don't either,
It's really hard to
don't either.
imagine.
because they're still using that 6 million gallons, and
They haven't got more
this
water.
just seems like a lot
This
of
is a,
investment
Yeah,
just
or a little
for
shifting of-
efficiency.
Little efficiency or.
Well,
I don't know.
And having right now the one well, they may have some knowledge of upconing that they did have a
they may
failure.
want to be slowing their draw.
They may be.
And we
taking
would
it.
want them to do it if they're concerned.
They forgot to tell us that they had that problem.
Okay, but.
Some more questions.
Okay, so I mean, I think we've given you guys a pretty good sense of what the set of questions are. Okay, so are we ready then to?
Would you like it itemized, Hank, or
If you want to send me something, I've been taking notes, so I have kind of a list of questions that you guys have brought up.
you probably can summarize yourself then?
Yeah, you probably have a pretty good sense of it.
Okay.
Yep. Okay. So moving along, we are still on track to be, I assume, to be doing nearshore testing with Suffolk County Health Department.
Are we asking?
Joe wanted to talk to you guys about that, so he had some ideas, so maybe we'll talk about that next.
So we want to table that, and it may go alongside of, which it did in my agenda, the idea of doing measurement of saltwater intrusion potentiality based on USGS test new well, saltwater intrusion measuring well. So, okay,
Could we,
so we'll circle around to that.
Could we contact Joe before the next meeting and just sort of
Yeah.
I'll call him and
We
just
wanna
find out a
we wanna
little
see
bit
the
about
proposal.
what's going on. Because I think that waiting a month is,
Yeah, you can reach out to him.
Yeah, we should reach out.
So you
you
can-
know, just
Well,
do
yeah,
it
and he-
inner.
and he was not well, but we can all send him like, get well soon, Joe, and
Well,
by
I'm
the
not gonna
way.
call him now, but,
And by the way, what have we got from Fred Stein? Okay, so then we began this discussion last time, and I'd like to continue it based on my own personal experience. So our mission statement procedures are, we review the data and then we make recommendations. Now, I'm somebody, we've developed data that shows that a few houses in the center triangle have non-potable water, and a good number of houses, bordering on half the houses in the center triangle, have what Joe and we have described as action level concerns. That is potable water, but in the 5 to 10 milligram range for nitrogen. And I'm one of those homes, my own home was one of the homes that when we tested was part of the center triangle and I had, according to Mermaid, Goldman, I had 7 milligrams of nitrogen per liter. So I was right there smack in the middle of that. And the only recommendation that I felt we had clearly made to the community was test your water. And my concern was that for the people who had 5 to 10 milligrams of nitrogen, correlation is not necessarily causality. Any concerns that might be raised by the 5 to 10 milligram range also raise the question, what else is in your water? So that was yet another reason why testing, especially when you find that you're in that action level, was important. So right away, right after we ran the testing, I called in Suffolk County Health Department and tested my water. And I have since distributed my water test to all of you. And just to characterize it for a moment, I was first of all very happy because I had 5 point something milligrams of nitrogen. I was still in the action range, but lower in the action range than I thought I had been at. The Suffolk County Health Department also highlighted that my water was a little bit acidic and that I might want a water softener. Suffolk County Health Department also highlighted, and I was surprised that they did this, that I had 1,4-dioxane in my water.
Interesting.
I had 0.19 milligrams of dioxane, where 1 would be the potability limit. So 0.19.
2 is the
so-
MSCL.
Or 2.
2 is the
I'm
MCL.
sorry, 2 is the MCL. So 0.19, it's like I'm at 10% of the MCL, it's a low level, but they had highlighted it. They had drawn yellow over it. There was obviously, and I was surprised, and it made me look up 1,4-dioxane a little more. And I knew that on Suffolk County, there were industrial processes that had led to 1,4-dioxane contamination.
Junkyard.
Yeah.
Oh, it's everywhere.
Junkyard.
Personal care products.
But it turns out it's a degradation product of things that are put into cosmetics and
Yeah.
shampoos.
Oh, that's you.
Yeah, and so,
Household cleaning products, personal care products. So,
so I was glad that I only had 1/10 of the MCL, but I was surprised to find that I had 1,4-dioxane in the first place, and that was something to be on watch for.
Interesting.
And I believe that there's other people who had their water tested who are present at this meeting, who also have seen 1,4-dioxane readings. So it's around, it's in the environment. I was not going to, light my hair on fire about it.
one thing I would like to just throw out there.
Mhm.
I think it's all over the place. And I think that we really need to think, should we put together a list for consumers about what products are most likely to contain 1,4-dioxane? What products are most likely to contain any one of the 1,200
Yeah.
PFOs that there are in that family? I mean, there are products out there that you can purchase to reduce your exposure, to reduce exposure.
Or they're
Exposure.
products that will cause less contamination, that will
Yeah.
degrade.
Yeah, that will
Right, so,
contribute.
right, well, I mean, it seems to me unalloyed good to make people aware of those products
Yes.
and what products are more of a concern, what products would be helpful. So is there any do you have a thought that that's something that we need to create a subcommittee around or create
I think it's
project
pretty
around?
simple. I mean, I think it's just a matter of there's a lot of different websites that recommend, these are the products that will lessen, that are safe. These are the products that don't have the risk of 1,4-dioxane and PFAS. There's just a lot of companies that are making products now because they're very understanding
Right.
of the problem. So putting out a list of those products or things you can buy that won't contribute to the.
So I would almost suggest that's officially now new business that we want to.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think I will do it. I don't think it's really,
Okay, doesn't need to be belabored.
no,
So-
Not to belabor, but just to
Yeah.
make sure that there's not something that we're exposing the town to if Unilever comes in and says, you told nobody in your island to use our products, what's going on?
it wouldn't be a
Our lawyers
negative.
will contact
It
you.
wouldn't be a negative. It would come from a positive. These products
So you
are
wouldn't say-
PFAS-free,
So
1,4-dioxane-free.
free,
I see, yeah.
1,4-dioxane free
Okay.
cosmetics or.
That's good, and that makes it,
Positive,
that makes
Always
it.
positive.
Okay, so then the third thing that.
What
jumped
number
out
are we
at me-
on?
Sorry?
What number are we on?
We're on WAC recommendation for
8.
center residents, and I'm a center resident,
Number 8.
number 8.
Number 8, okay, thank you.
Okay, so I'm a center resident, so there was one other thing that jumped out at me about my Suffolk County Health Department report, and that was that I had 0.4 nanograms of PFAS in my water supply.
Surprise, surprise.
So now or 4 nanograms, not 0.4, 4 nanograms. Now, that was not highlighted by the Suffolk County Health Department, and it was not highlighted by them because the MCL is 10.
Still,
However, the MCL next year will be 4.
It will be, or?
The proposed MCL.
Proposed, okay.
Well, but they've announced it, and they've announced it, they've said,
the EPA announced
The new
it by
administration.
2027, they were going to reduce the MCLs to 4 parts per trillion.
and they were going to give
were still-
water supply companies 3 years to become compliant to that.
But they were still deliberating because small water companies, there's a tremendous financial burden on them to put any kind of filtration. So they were still deliberating whether that 2027 date was going to stay firm or if they were going to move it back. But as of right now, we know that that's the date.
And, and politically, all bets are off in this current environment. So,
Yes.
right, so I'm not counting on the feds riding to the rescue or anything like that. In addition, I
Riding to the rescue.
I do not think it's going to
Well,
happen.
that's what Custard said, look at all these things.
So, all right, but at the same time, I'm disturbed that I have essentially the MCL that is proposed for the future. So the question becomes, it makes me feel somewhat happy that for the last 4 years, I've been drinking bottled water
And lots of plastic.
and lots of plastic, so I'm concerned about that. So,
There's no winning, I'm here.
well,
There's no-
okay, there's no winning, but of all the bad solutions that we have in front of us, what do you guys
Which one?
What do you advise I do?
I've been diagnosed also with this new test of PFOAs and.
On your water.
Of all, the thing I did not think we'd ever have in Silver Beach because of the tremendous flushing action.
Right, you would think
You have
you'd
the
be,
shower wells, if you go and pollute the bay, which is, that kills the fish and so forth, but it shouldn't bother me.
right,
I have.
you're showing
evidence. I
PFAS.
show evidence of that. And the only,
And we see plenty of it because we've seen it also in the FOIA Health Department information from all the restaurants.
West Neck Water
and
has.
the only water really potable that I have is from my RO, under the sink RO system. That is the only thing that takes everything out back to normal again, basic to good water.
Right. So
So if you want a recommendation, you get it under the sink RO.
and under the sick.
Even though we've talked about that not being a solution. It's, well, because of the concept, it depends on the efficiency of the system, but if it's a one-to-one
How much
system,
drinking water do you use?
Well,
I
yeah,
I
so,
don't know.
No, we don't drink much, but a couple, maybe a couple gallons at the most per day.
Well, I think it depends on the size of your household.
No, drinking versus usage to flush.
This is not
It's different,
flushing
right?
and
How much do you
showering.
consume?
Yes.
No, but very little water.
Well,
I'm just saying,
Yeah, yeah.
but it does
Yeah.
give you
Okay.
clean water for $200.
So my assumption was that, there's municipal water, clean municipal water, monitored municipal water that, would address 4 milligrams for nanograms of PFAS, if that did become the standard,
And that-
is not going to arrive at Lake Drive in the decades
And
ahead.
the same as Lou Corbett is, I would love to have public, that's why I asked how much public water is per month, in general, to have.
And that's a very difficult question to answer because it
It depends.
It's another
understand. I
discussion.
understand that,
Right.
but in any case, the chances of us in my time frame of living that long to have public water in Silver Beach is pretty slim.
Right,
Yeah.
and I'm closer to the center than you are, but it's not
Yeah,
happening for.
So you're gonna have to take the old bull by the horns yourself.
All right, so then,
Sorry.
at the same time, I've set aside money to do, and I've put in my applications for grants for the advanced septic systems. But my understanding is that the output of my RO system cannot go through my advanced septic
Correct, it has to
system.
go to a separate system.
It's a dry well.
It has to, so the recommendation, we didn't actually make it explicit in the conversation, but implicit in what you guys were just saying was under the sink as opposed to whole home
Ooh,
RO. Right,
That's in use.
so in terms of concern about concentrating waste in an area, it's still a thing. Going into that dry well is gonna be a more highly concentrated, it's whatever I take out of my water.
And it
But-
depends on who you speak to, too.
Yeah.
Because if you're gonna take out, say, 5 gallons of fresh water, and it's a 1-to-1 ratio, where you're gonna only put in back, if you get 1 gallon of fresh water, you put in
1 gallon.
1 gallon of
wastewater
wastewater.
in the center of the dry well.
It was
Wherever.
brought up to me that wastewater was in the aquifer before you started this process.
Correct.
So you're taking it out, but you're putting it back in the
Concentrated
same
at,
place,
it's the same place. It
but
is a,
diluted.
there is a new plume, so if it
Yeah.
happens that my neighbor's
Yeah, it's
well
It's still
is-
there. It's still there.
So in some ways, you could say, it would be great if I had 3 or 4 different dry wells to lead it into and distribute it a little
Better
bit.
having 3 or 4 different wells.
But, being realistic about this, small amount of water, we're not drinking that much water from our sink, going into a dry well separate. So the recommendation therefore is that I'm doing an under the sink RO system in the kitchen. I'm turning off any water coming out of my refrigerator and my ice maker
There's a device you can get to take it over.
to bring that water
Yeah,
to
it's just
the
a piece of
refrigerator.
food, yeah.
Okay, well, this is important. I mean, I'm literally gonna I'm going there, right?
So are you saying, is this a preamble into saying this is what people that have had,
We need a
in the center
recommendation for
of town.
people so that they're drinking healthy water.
what you do is what we're gonna recommend to them?
Well, I'm asking you to recommend to me a reasonable idea of what I should do now. I've gotten tired of carrying 5-gallon jars.
That's the other option.
From well, I am. I've been carrying
The other
5-gallon
option is
jars
you-
from
you
the
buy
IGA.
plastic bottles of water.
And I'm tired of drinking plastic, and I'm tired of,
Right.
and I'm figuring that at some point I'm not gonna be as strong as I am now, and I don't wanna schlep,
So you really don't have too many options, and we've discussed that. That
right?
the options
So-
for the center residents who tested high in nitrates is RO systems. That right now is the only option.
And the cheaper the better, because it's the
Cheaper
owner
better because.
is the one who has to do this. No one's gonna be kicking him in the head and saying, you gotta do this. And if you say, oh, it's gonna cost $10,000. that's
A lot of people are not gonna
That's
make
a
it.
lot of different number for me in the center here to say, oh, I'll bite that bullet.
Well, it was recommended, and I would like to make the recommendation, I heard it said at one town board meeting, that a fund be started for people whose water was compromised, for them to perhaps draw from.
$100, a $200 system does not sound like it's gonna break anybody in the center.
Well, okay, it's clearly not just a $200 system. I need a dry well, I need a new pipe going down to it, I need tubing over my fridge perhaps. I think I need my counter
Well,
also
you
drilled.
need a
with
plumber
things
at
like that.
$150 an hour, that's the going rate
Right.
today, to do something with.
You know, all of this Andrew did in his
Yes,
presentation.
he did.
So if you just go back and look at the presentation, you can see
Oh,
what that cost
So,
was.
Yeah, so Andrew has given me the
He's
numbers
given you
of
that
the,
information.
and the phone numbers of
That's
the,
It's all been, yeah, it's all been
Suppliers.
said there before.
right? Okay,
that's for
so,
a
so,
whole house system, I believe, too.
all right, so,
Or public, it was for public water.
so
No.
as,
He did a comparison.
right?
Public water, what it was gonna cost versus if you installed your own RO system, what
It
it was
was a
gonna cost.
it was a whole house system that he priced out.
Well, he also was dealing with
so.
$100.
I don't remember exactly.
No, I don't think
So
so.
I'm about to bring in the people that he consulted with to make me a proposal. But,
And the thing is, it's interesting, is your water will change. So you
Uh-huh.
don't know what's gonna happen
over
next
time,
year,
right,
exactly with your water,
right.
which is gonna require some more-
Adjustments to my
some
filtration.
more adjustments, more than likely. And this goes for the whole center. And that's why his proposal, in some respects, was really great, because you put it into a corporation's hands who says, we will give you good water, public water, versus
Mhm.
every owner is gonna have to
Having
do it
to
on
do
their own.
analysis every year.
And their own time, and their own amount of money. I mean, basically, well, and then they're gonna say, well, we can fix this. Well, what about our aquifer? Well, you're flushing that even with another cistern. Where are you putting all this bad stuff?
Mhm.
You're putting it back into our drinking
Yeah,
water
absolutely.
over the long run. Now, how does that make sense for our community in 50 years or something like that? It's still there and it's concentrated and we have more of it.
Right, so therefore, I appreciate your
I'm
comment
just saying,
about
it's like,
the cheaper solution is better because this is not the long-term solution.
It is not long-term.
we truly don't know, but
It's the best thing we have right now.
It
It's the
certainly
best
seems
thing.
like a dynamic situation, considering a lot of things.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I asked Andrew what his take on this was. He said, my comments regarding recommendations to persons now living in the center is as follows. Have your water tested for potability 1 time per year.
Yes.
So that means I'm back to the summer, I'm coming back to the Suffolk County Health Department,
$100 a year.
doing another
Yeah.
$100 a year should be, all right.
Yeah.
If your water has contaminants exceeding the applicable maximum contaminant level, state, federal, whichever is more stringent, you should consider obtaining potable water at your home. At this point, your options are treating your whole house, or treatment of your home, whole house, or point of use,
Right,
or 2, buying bottled water.
right.
To evaluate water treatment options and costs, consult a water treatment supplier and installer, so I'm planning to now do that.
Mhm.
When evaluating costs, include ongoing maintenance. When deciding what to do, please consider any special needs of persons in your household, such as babies, young children, the elderly, or persons with compromised immune systems, several of which apply to me.
Mhm. Mhm.
When deciding what to do, please consider, note to the WAC, I recommend a full discussion, not today, but as we go, of whether our goal is drinking water meeting the applicable MCLs or something else. Now, I am currently meeting applicable MCLs without doing anything. So we're talking, but we're still feeling like what I have is of sufficient concern. I'm sufficiently concerned, given the special considerations, and also given the amount of science that we've studied about what are the associations with 5 to 10 milligram range of nitrogen.
If you go into our presentation we made a year ago, there was a recommendation treatment system for private well number 1 option, pH adjustment, acidity, alkalinity, water softener, and reverse osmosis system at the kitchen sink. And so his comparison, his estimated capital and maintenance, which he's defended over and over again, estimated the annual cost is somewhere in the vicinity of $795, more or less, and $200. So the annual cost is about, let's
$1,000.
say, almost under $1,000, but between $900 and $1,000, okay?
Mhm.
That's more or less. So that's what it's gonna cost you for
And then the installation costs?
then installation,
Capital, right?
capital, I don't know what the
So-
5,300, so estimated 20-year cost NPV at 3%, including a RO is $23,000, so.
And I think when Greg said, I think I gotta raise my prices.
That is what Greg said, but we're about to find out because we're gonna have to go through some of this.
Yeah.
I'm done with,
The other thing we haven't talked about is moving your well.
that's an option.
That is a no.
But that's a very expensive
Or-
option as well.
Pull your point. Or
So moving it
Clorox
up
your
and down.
well. I mean, that's one of the things I'm gonna have to.
Well,
do.
we did Clorox it because one of the things that I had was,
Coliform.
coliform, correct. So I did that.
Oh, you did that?
I did,
yourself?
we did, yeah,
Okay.
well, actually,
Yeah.
um,
I have iron bacteria, so I'm gonna
Mm.
Clorox my well.
yeah, it was actually not, I didn't do
Yeah.
it personally, but Greg Wells did it.
Yeah.
And they did the,
So what,
work.
because we have a few more things that I'd like to get to, so
okay, so.
What are we
all right,
saying here?
So all we're saying is that, I'm now on this adventure because I
Okay.
am an exact example of what it is that has to be done. And I'm assuming we're not getting public water down to Lake Drive anytime in the next couple of decades.
unless you have enough people in your area that
Well, I,
want
Lady-
to have
and Lady didn't
municipal
bring
water,
that
in which case you do have that
27,000
option.
pound crystal ball.
It wouldn't be for 2 years, but
okay,
just saying. Remember, 40% of an area
yeah, right.
that requests community water because of Suffolk County Water,
Suffolk County Water
their
Authority would
mandate
come
is
to
that
us.
they would come.
So that's an alternative recommendation you
Yes.
guys could be
And that's a
making
good
to
one.
me,
I mean,
which is that I
yeah.
bring my community together
That's correct. You
and
could do
ask,
that.
do people want to explore that?
Right. That's right.
And this summer, for sure, we're gonna be bringing my community together so that the conversation can happen.
And that's up to the community, that's an option if they don't want to go the private RO systems.
All right, so we are forced into, we need to,
That's a good
over
point.
time, come up with a set of recommendations. We're exploring it, we're sort of proofing what Andrew's work
We
was.
did a pretty good job today, I think,
Right.
in netting out some of the things that are options. What
Okay.
we told
All right,
based on call.
I will just mention that Thursday, the 13th, I'm targeting a subcommittee meeting either in the early afternoon or later afternoon. So the irrigation subcommittee, Thursday, the 13th,
Right.
depending on, as people send me back their availability, which works best. And I did send all of you a link to the study document that we have.
Right.
And if you don't click on it, you're not going to get the dialogue that says request access. But you need to request access. I'm giving people read only and comment so that you can make comments. And there's next time I'll do a little visual about where the comment button is
Do
on.
we want to look
Google
for
spreadsheets.
more articles?
We want, Meg just sent me a couple more, which I will have ChatGPT summarize and I will include into the index,
Great.
so that we'll have easy, quick way of seeing what's in
We're
each
on number
study.
10, right?
Scattered
That's
around.
on number 10, correct?
And the new study index is,
I sent you a link to
Yeah,
it, so if
yeah.
you just click on that link, it'll ask me for. to
that's
give
in
you
the
permission.
SharePoint, I take it.
It's
Yeah.
in
Yeah, it's
SharePoint,
in your-
but for some reason, basically, I'm kind of happy that Google Spreadsheets takes the author and says, I have to give you permission to get in there. And I'm happy about that just because I want to give you control.
The
of
editor
this
right,
right now.
and all
Yeah.
that, but it is a SharePoint.
It is in the
File,
SharePoint. It's
okay.
in the SharePoint, and all the work will be done in the SharePoint folder.
And I believe that we set the date for having looked through this information and assessed it and come together with recommendations by March
By March,
31st,
Yeah.
which is 2 months, and they go fly by.
Yeah,
so-
they do fly by,
Pretty good, I
so get
think.
in there and
Yeah,
take a
yeah.
look. So if you haven't yet clicked on the link, click on it, send me a request, and I'll send you. and
It
I'll
could be
give you
considered a
permission.
work in progress too. Another thing, once you have the format, and someone says, I got a great article.
Well, it should be a work in progress.
But
It
we
should be-
want to give it to the town. The town wants to have this information
Yeah,
for the RFP.
Yeah, that's easy, but I'm saying our work can be a work in progress, what we give to the town.
right, it shouldn't end.
Is not frozen. It will evolve, that data. As new articles come out, other
Oh, well,
things occur,
absolutely, it's all,
we can basically
Yeah.
do that.
Yeah, well, it gets older. So now any old or new business that we want to raise, I know
Yeah,
that Lisa
I-
has something.
right, because I had been requested to ask Jason Hyde from the Department of Health about getting information, how we could access their testing results. And so he said that private wells, they collate that information, or they, write it down, streets only. The names and the addresses are redacted. But he said we could, foil that information. He also said that non-community wells for 2024 gives us the specific information, and that's accessible now. So again, that's something we can FOIA if we want. And
For community wells, you have the specific address.
non-community,
You have the street address for private.
Yeah, you get the full address, and the name of the company.
so all we have to do is send in a FOIA request.
Right, and we have recently gotten all the
Right, but
community
he said they
wells.
just completed the 2024
So we can
results, so
update it.
we can get that and update it, we can look at them. And he also said that they have groundwater investigation data from Shelter Island or for the last 10 years. So do you have that?
I don't have that, but we can.
Yeah, we want to request that too, I think.
That's great.
And this is like what, like they recently went into, I think it was into your community and did some additional testing.
This is the
No, not the electromagnetic. They went in and did additional home tests, the full panel tests.
As Jason
that people
described it,
hadn't,
when,
on their
when
own.
when a property is flagged, when they do a testing, say, for example, on their own, or if somebody's home testing comes back, and it's flagged, like yours was flagged for
Right.
1,4-dioxane, they will sometimes request that they go in and they do more testing
in the area.
in the area, so that they can isolate areas where one particular constituent seems to be elevated. So that's something that they do, and I believe that would be inclusive in this data, this groundwater investigation data. That's,
Seems
would
to
be
be that
covered,
what that is.
that would be
Right.
part of
Yeah,
that.
that's kind of a flag.
And they did that this summer in Silver Beach.
And that, well, they did it with me, basically, they came and tested my water on Mount spec. They came back 3 weeks later and tested it again,
Right.
and basically confirmed the fact that things were bad.
So Meg, would the town do the,
Yeah, I can put Joe on it.
okay, because I can FOIA the private wells. You've already done that. I mean, the non-community potable.
And what are we gonna do with that?
Yeah, my data's probably 8 months old, I guess.
Right.
I was told.
Yeah, you're looking at the 2024 community.
We're looking
well
at
data.
2024 non-community well results and the private well results, not.
Did they do any analysis for it?
No, I asked him, because we were trying to figure out how we could take the information that we get and collate it and put it in a form that was,
Just a bigger picture, yeah.
yeah, and he said they really don't do that because they have other data that is, I guess, that is included, and it would be, they don't do that.
But they don't do any analysis that they have on their own without our data, not just the data that they have. Do they do any
What kind of analysis?
health of an area?
Oh, you mean like if they flag an area,
Yeah,
is there
right,
an
it was
analysis
like
that comes
Silver
out
Beach,
of
they said
that?
They did some of that, I just wondered if they
I
had,
didn't ask for that
something
specifically,
like,
but I could ask them.
how's it doing down there, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I could find out, okay, so what are the results of your flagged areas? What,
Yeah, or
Do you
any
do-
of the sensitive areas that they
So we do
flag.
want.
all right.
That would be
we
very
want
nice
this
to have.
information for you.
I think he told me once, but
Because
I
that's like
forgot.
official, I mean, that's like, good information.
So we have that, we'll have that information, and digesting it becomes, the difficulty, making it digestible to others.
Because this is all part and parcel of the whole, of all of the testing that we're doing. It's going to give us a more complete picture, and the data is already out there, so we should
Right.
definitely incorporate it into what we're trying to do.
Right.
You know?
Interesting.
Right, and we should be able to get a pretty good map of things like PFAS and 1,4-dioxane.
Yes, and then for those of you who are like Greg, who are, graphically inclined, we can make our own data points and our own graphs and our own information.
Right, so, okay, well, that's very good information.
Yep.
Other things that, new business, old business, things that need,
Not business.
okay. All right, so we're at the end of the agenda. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
Oh, boy.
Second.
Okay, very good.
Party's over.
We didn't ask anybody if
Oh,
they
yeah,
had any
well,
questions.
I did adjourn them, but
Dave,
they were,
Sandy?
They might if
Yeah.
they didn't raise their hands.
Hmm.